Good Saturday afternoon. It is 3 p.m. here on the East Coast in Ohio, and it is time for our college football episode this weekend. Today we are doing the three Power Five conferences and the independents that are going to be playing this college football season. Sometime next week, I will be doing the group of five teams that will be playing. I believe there are only three conferences playing, Conference USA, Sun Belt, and can't remember the third one off the top of my head right now. But we're going to start off with doing the Power Five, and we're doing the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12, and then we're going to finish with the independent. There are only three independents playing, not counting Notre Dame because they're playing with the ACC this year. Um, the independents will be really fast. Uh, we're going to get through. Only one of them's playing a 10-game season, and two of them are playing a really short seasons. They're both playing 5 games. You'll see the one independent a lot with the ACC, and then next week when we do the group of five. So we're going to move on here to the ACC with Clemson. So as you see here, hopefully it's the best you can. We're going to start off with Clemson. As you can tell, we have them going undefeated. They just recently had the Citadel added to their schedule. I don't know when exactly. It was it might have been overnight or sometime after I had started putting together their Excel sheet. But as you can tell, I have them going undefeated, 11-0 overall, and 10-0 in conference play. They do, obviously, the Citadel's going to be an easy game. They have some easy opponents. They have some hard opponents. The game at Notre Dame is going to be really fun. I believe that Notre Dame's only won the game against Clemson once, and that was back in the 70s. And Clemson's won all the other matchups. I looked at that historically. They've had 2 matchups in the past 10 years, and Clemson's won both of them. So, and then all the other teams they're playing, I can't see them losing to. So we're going to move on to Louisville now. So Louisville has 3 Friday night games this year. They play on October 9th in Georgia Tech in Atlanta. They play at home against Syracuse on the 20th of November. And then they go to Boston College on the 27th of November. I have them going 8-3 and 7-3 overall in the division, or in conference play, not division. Another thing is that the ACC is not playing in divisions. They're playing as the top 2 teams overall in the conference. Since there are 15 teams, the top 2 teams from the ACC get into the ACC championship game. So they play Western Kentucky as their non-ACC opponent, and they have a good schedule. They play Notre Dame in the middle of October, and it's in South Bend, Indiana. They also they play both Virginia Tech and Virginia back-to-back weeks, one home and one away. So I have them losing to Miami at home, then obviously at Notre Dame, and their third loss is at Virginia. Virginia, I have them and Virginia Tech doing good both. Let's see. But yeah, other than that, I talked about the 3 Friday night games, and we're going to move on to Wake Forest now. They did have a non-conference game against Old Dominion at home. As of right now, as me doing this right now live, they have not replaced that game, and they're not going to play a non-conference game as of me checking last. So I have them going 4-6. They play all their games on Saturdays, and they start off with Clemson, so that's going to obviously be a hard one. They also play Notre Dame at home, which is kind of cool because you get to have Notre Dame at home. They also have back-to-back Virginia Tech at home. That's going to be a little rough. They get their second one at Syracuse, and they go on a winning streak for a little bit. They beat UNC at North Carolina, and they beat Duke at Duke. So they would get 2 wins down in Chapel Hill and in Durham. Sorry, I was blanking on where Duke is all of a sudden. And they get a win at home against Miami to kind of bring up their record a bit, or they lose actually their last 2. Sorry about that. They lose Senior Day against Miami, and they lose at Louisville. So they kind of get a couple wins in a row, all on the road against Syracuse, North Carolina, and Duke. And they lose their last 2 after getting up to 4-4 to 500 record. I don't know if they'll get a non-conference game to go in at this rate with them starting on the 12th. I know that the ACC starts that week, and I don't know if they'll be able to get another team to be able to jump in and replace Old Dominion. The only reason why Old Dominion isn't playing is because they're not having a football season this year, and so I believe they're in Conference USA. They're the only team in Conference USA that is not playing this season. We're going to move on to Florida State, the Seminoles. We have them doing a little bit better than the other team. They originally didn't have a non-conference game. Their game got canceled against Samford, but when I was double checking this earlier, they had gotten a game against Jacksonville State added at home on the 3rd of October. So they start off at home against Georgia Tech. They lose against Miami in Miami. So if you just want, you can look. Obviously, they win there. Some of their bigger game, obviously, big game Miami. They go to Notre Dame. That's kind of cool. You get to see Florida State at Notre Dame, and then obviously Florida State hosts Clemson. That'll be cool. They get Virginia at home. We're going to move on to Boston College now. They were supposed to play the Bobcats of Ohio University, which is me and Justin's school. The MAC, as we said a couple weeks ago, has canceled all fall sports, including football, and they're going to hopefully play them in the fall. Boston College, as of right now, hasn't put in a placement for Ohio. That would be probably, if they do, it might be the 26th of September, if they could. They do play a Friday night game against Louisville, as I talked about earlier when talking about Louisville. I have them going 3-7. They beat Duke, but lose to North Carolina at home. Or they lose to Duke. Or no, yeah, I said it right the first time. Sorry. They play both Techs, Georgia and Virginia. They host Notre Dame, which will be very, very interesting to see Notre Dame come into Boston College. And they close at Virginia. So they do have both Virginia teams, but they do play both Techs also. So that's also something cool. And they go to both Virginias also. We're going to move on to Syracuse, which they are one of our 3 ACC teams that play Liberty this year. Liberty was helped out by the ACC with filling in some of their games. With 3 of them with the ACC, they had Liberty. We'll get into Liberty when we get to the FCS though, more. So this is more about Syracuse though. So here we go. Have Syracuse losing their first 2, so UNC and Pittsburgh away, and then we have them winning 2 at home to Georgia Tech and Duke, and then we have them losing to Liberty, who's an independent. They lose to Clemson, lose to Wake Forest, lose to Boston College, and then they don't get their 3rd win until at home against NC State for senior night on the 28th of November. Speaking of NC State, we're going to move on to them. They got last in the division last year. Obviously, this year, because of what's going on in the world right now, there's no divisions, but they're also playing Liberty. And they're going to have them as towards the end of the season. They also have a Friday game. NC State does. They have Miami at home on the 6th of November. I have NC State starting off 0-4. They don't get their first win until Duke, and then they get another win the next week at Chapel Hill. Then they continue their losing streak until their final home game on senior night when they beat Georgia Tech. So now we're going to go on to Virginia, the first of the 2 schools in Virginia for the ACC. Their first game was supposed to be on September 11th against the Virginia Military Institute, but they canceled that, so they are playing all of their games in conference unless they get a replacement game on the 26th of September, most likely. I don't have them winning until NC State on the 10th of October, and after then they start evening out with win against Wake Forest, and then win in Miami, then win at home with 3 home games against North Carolina, Louisville, and Duke. And then they also win against Florida State and Boston College to finish 8-2. I only have them losing their first 2 games against Clemson, who went undefeated, and Virginia Tech, who we'll get into right now. So with Virginia Tech, they are the 3rd and final team that plays Liberty. They also have them at home. They play Virginia in their 2nd game because their non-conference game isn't until almost the end of the season. I have them going 8-3. I only have them losing to Louisville in Louisville. And then I have them losing their final 2 games at Pittsburgh and home on senior day against Clemson because, of course, Clemson goes undefeated. Now we're going to go to South Beach to Miami, the U. I'm kind of going fast and not really explaining a lot of this because I do have the ACC is 15 teams, and then we have the SEC at 14, Big 12. I know that's not as big, but then we also have I'm doing the 3 independent schools, and then I want to have a nice break before Monday and starting up school too. So Miami has a Thursday night game to start off on the 10th against the University of Alabama in Birmingham at home. They also play NC State on Friday, which we talked about a little bit ago. They play Virginia at home, and they play Virginia Tech away, and Georgia Tech at home. I just wanted to bring that up because, it's interesting to play both Virginias and then the Virginia or Georgia Tech, even though it is all three normally a divisional game, but when you bring up and look at these schedules, you want to also see which games they added from non-divisions and divisions, because they do still play a good amount of who's in their division and who's not. Um, it would have been cool to see Notre Dame play Miami, though, whether it would have been in Miami or in Notre Dame. Uh, it would have been cool, I think. So, but we don't have that happening this year. Uh, maybe we'll see that happen here in the short coming. So, but like me and Justin said, I think last week or a week, 2 weeks ago, something like that, with all this happening and or not my Notre Dame doing this with the ACC to do it just this season, maybe we'll see them actually join full time. And I know ESPN has also talked about how this could lead to realignment for more geographical reasons. One of their guys that does college, uh, he does articles for college football and sports. He did the college 150th anniversary stuff, and um, he put out an article the other day about realignment possibly happening due to all this stuff. We're going to move on to Pittsburgh now. University of Pitt had a game to start the season against another MAC school. They were going to play Miami of Ohio. Like they did last year, they played Ohio University, uh, and they were supposed to play Miami this year. That game obviously got canceled due to the obvious reasons of, you know, the MAC canceling its football season and moving it to the spring. Uh, but they do play some interesting games. At home, they have Syracuse, Louisville, some good matchups. Some, if I've, they have Notre Dame at home. I know Pitt's home field is the uh, Heinz Field, but it's still going to be a good matchup, I believe. They do not play Virginia though this year, which is interesting, seeing that isn't a divisional matchup, or that would have been a normal divisional matchup, but instead I believe they're basically taking Virginia out and putting Notre Dame in for them. They also play both Virginia and Georgia Tech though still, and then they end the season on against Clemson. So their season is, I believe, the only one that goes all the way to the end of November, when a lot of them, such as when UNC, which we're going to move on to, and I think all of the other teams, they end on December 5th. They go from the 12th to the 5th. And I believe that Pitt is the only one that ends in November. Um, Moving on now to UNC, as I said, they're going to play Charlotte at home. Them and Duke are both going to play Charlotte this year as they're out of conference. And then UNC is going to host Notre Dame on a Friday night as one of their games. So it'll be interesting to see Mac Brown try and beat Notre Dame, as I have them losing their seventh game, though. I have them starting out 3-0, beating Syracuse, beating Charlotte, and Boston College. And then from there, I have them losing 8 straight, even losing to Duke and Notre Dame, and then Miami on this. So we're going to move on to Duke, though, now. And Duke, as I said, plays Charlotte. They play them on Halloween. Duke, though, starts at Notre Dame. So that's going to be hard to start your season off at Notre Dame. and I don't have them picking up their first win till Charlotte at home, and then from there I have them winning against North Carolina, and those are the only 2 wins though they get, which is pretty sad. I know Duke and North Carolina, their football programs aren't as good as their lacrosse or basketball or you know some of their other sports programs, but we're going to move on to Georgia Tech now. Georgia Tech opens up against Florida State at Florida State, and then their non-conference opponent is UCF out of the American. That's like one of the bigger programs that is being played against, and I believe UCF is actually going to get an easy win here against Georgia Tech, even though I think a lot of people have Georgia Tech favored in this. I think UCF can probably actually beat Georgia Tech and everything. As you see, I don't have them winning until Duke at home. I don't know if it's actually going to go this way. I think it's more of just how it ended up playing out when I had the teams picked. They host Notre Dame though. I do actually think Notre Dame will do good in the ACC with their opponents. As we're going to go to their schedule, they did have a MAC team scheduled also, as they were one of 3 of the opponent or schools that had a MAC team scheduled. As like I said earlier, as of me doing this before I was streaming, none of these teams have been replaced. Obviously, October 3rd would probably be when they could play, replacing the Western Michigan team. But I have them going 9-1 overall, only losing to Clemson. Obviously, like Florida State and some of these games I believe will be close, but some of them I don't think will be that close, like Duke and North Carolina. But I do believe they will be good games, and some won't be, obviously. Some will be blowouts, probably. Clemson, I think, will be close. Obviously, since that's that, we're going to go to the final standings now. So I have Clemson as the top team, going undefeated, and Notre Dame only losing 1 game will be in the championship game. And I actually have Notre Dame winning the rematch. I know that's very controversial, but I have them doing better as it is. They played them at the beginning of November, so gives them a month-ish to turn around. It'll be about, I think, it'll be about December 12th, I think, that the ACC will be playing their championship game. So you give them about a month to get everything sorted out for when they do play Clemson again in the ACC championship game. As you can tell, here is the final standings over here. If you want to get a close glimpse, I'll just leave this up real quick for you guys. Okay, we're going to move on now. So we're going to go back to me. So now we're going to do the next team, or not team, but conference. We're going to go on to the SEC now. Okay. And so here we are with the SEC now. And we're going to start with the defending East champions, I believe, in Georgia. I believe that, the East Division champions, Georgia Bulldogs. We're going to zoom in on this a little for everyone at home so it can be better for everyone to see. I'm going to be doing that as we go on. I noticed as I was preparing, it wasn't zoomed in properly enough, so I didn't test it before soon enough as I should have. So we're going to get started. The SEC won't be starting until the 26th of September, much later than the other conferences are, but they are doing strictly conference only. I couldn't find whether they were doing like how the ACC is, where they're not playing in divisions or not. So I did it as if they were doing in divisions. So I have it, two divisions will face each other in the championship game in Atlanta. So I have Georgia going undefeated. I think it'll be very easy for them to go undefeated again. I think they will go into Alabama in Tuscaloosa and win. I believe it's going to be an easy division. They do play Florida in Jacksonville this year, so that's going to be a fun little neutral site game for the SEC to have. They have kind of an easy out of a non-division with Arkansas and Mississippi State. Their only two hard games are Auburn and Alabama. Those would be the only two teams I'd be worried about for Georgia. But other than that, I think they would do perfect and go back to the championship game. So we're going to move on to Florida now. As I said, they played Georgia in Jacksonville on November 7th. They're out their non-divisional schedule. Their really only tough opponent in the non-division is going to be LSU on October 17th here. And that isn't at home, though. I don't know if LSU is going to have fans, though. The SEC did say if they had fans in the stands, you have to wear like mask and social distance and everything. I did miss the show on accident on Friday, but don't worry. Monday I'm gonna stick on top of everything. Their home games this year for Florida are South Carolina, Arkansas, and Kentucky. So they have some good games and some bad games at home. Obviously, the only real game that would be, I guess, really you only have one good game at home for Florida that would be a good game, and that's Kentucky. Because, besides LSU, I mean, those are going to be good matchups for both of them. But I have them losing to LSU. I have them beating Kentucky. I have them losing to Georgia, obviously. And I have them losing in Tennessee. So we're going to go to Tennessee next, actually. And the way their schedule is set up, they play 4 division games and end with 2 division games, and then they play their 4 non-divisional games in the middle, which is kind of interesting, I think. So they start with South Carolina and Missouri, and then they play two harder teams in Georgia and Kentucky. I have them going 2-2 after those 4, and then I have them losing to Alabama, beating Arkansas, and then beating Texas A&M and losing to Auburn. But Auburn is away, so that's why that is. Alabama, obviously, it's Alabama. I don't think they're on the decline quite yet, but they're getting to that point. Obviously, Nick Saban's still around, but I mean, I think I believe they were close to being third last year with switching places with Auburn. So then they finished with Vanderbilt and Florida. I have them finishing 5-5 and 3-3 in the division. Obviously, it's not going to be, a normal season where you play 12 games, I believe it is, in a normal season, or how many it is. It depends on like how many, you have your preseason, or you're not preseason, thinking NFL, your non-conference, your conference, and then if you make it to the championship game and then your bowl games. It just depends on how good you are. We're going to move on to Kentucky, though. I have them going 6-4 and 4-2 in the division. They go to Alabama this year, and they also start off in Auburn. They play some tougher opponents. They play Ole Miss and Mississippi State both at home, though, so those will be some good games, some easier games to play at home. Let's see. They go to Tennessee this year, though. But yeah, those are kind of the bigger games. They go to Florida also, and Vanderbilt is at home this year. Now let's go to Missouri. This team, I believe, should be in the West, as we talked about in our conference realignment video. And then I think Auburn should go to the East because they're the most East team in the West Division. So, obviously, Missouri has a very has a harder schedule. They play Alabama at home week 1. Then they have Tennessee, and then they have LSU. 3 straight weeks of tough opponents. But then they have Vanderbilt at home. That's going to be an easier game for them. And then they go to Florida, home against Kentucky, home against Georgia, and then they go to South Carolina, where I have them getting their second win of the season. And then they finish off on a 3-game winning streak, finishing 4-6. They beat Arkansas and Mississippi State at home. Or Mississippi State's away, but they win their last 3 games. Now we're going to go to South Carolina. So South Carolina splits their divisional games 3-3, 3 at the beginning, 3 at the end, and their 4 non-divisional games in between. They have a tougher schedule with their non-divisional games. Texas A&M, Auburn, LSU, and Ole Miss. Ole Miss is the kind of easiest one. Texas A&M is going to be a 50-50 matchup, I believe, with them. But I do have them coming out with the win against A&M and Ole Miss. I don't have them winning any of their first 5 games. And then I only have them beating Texas A&M and Ole Miss because they finished against Missouri, which will be a kind of a 50-50 matchup like it was against A&M, but Missouri comes out on top. Then they play Georgia and Kentucky, which are one of the top 3 teams. They're both top 3 teams from last year. Georgia winning the division, and Kentucky getting, I believe, 3rd. But if you are looking down here at the teams that are up next and stuff, LSU obviously won their division last year, so that's the start of the next division. Vanderbilt is last in the division, and that's where we're going next, actually. So they start off at Texas A&M. I surprisingly have them winning when Texas A&M was 4th in their division last year. You never know what's going to happen, but I just believe that. Sorry, I wanted to get it off the date over there. That I just believe that I know it's in College Station, or it's at A&M, whatever it is. but I just think that A&M might be a little rusty to start off the season. And then they are at home against LSU. Obviously, LSU, I don't think is going to miss a step this year, but we're going to see more about that here in a little bit. I'm going 4-6. Their only wins come against A&M, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. They only get one divisional win, and that's against South Carolina. They finished against the top 4 teams in the division in Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia. So, okay, we're going to move on to the West now with the reigning national champions, LSU. Obviously, the colors change because it's the defending champs of the division. Each division has its own colors for the division champ. When we go to the Big 12, though, it will all be one color. That's the same thing with how the ACC was because they don't have divisions. But yeah, here we go. LSU starts off against Mississippi State. I obviously have them going undefeated. Their non-divisional games are pretty easy. They have Missouri, Vanderbilt, South Carolina. Their only tougher one will be Florida, and it's in Gainesville. So they have Alabama at home. They go to Auburn. Auburn might be a little hard. Alabama, I think, will be easier for them this year. So speaking of Alabama, though, we're gonna move on to them now. Alabama, the way their schedule structured, they play two divisional games between two of them, and then they do that again, and then they finish with 2. The Iron Bowl this year will be Senior Day. It's not their last game. Their last game is in Arkansas against the Razorbacks. I have them finishing 7-3. I only have them losing to Auburn. Georgia and LSU actually. So, obviously LSU and Georgia because they both go undefeated as we saw. So that's that. We're gonna move on to Auburn now. So Auburn has kind of easy schedule. Or not easy, but they play 3 of the top 4 teams from the East in Kentucky, Georgia, and Tennessee, and then they play South Carolina. South Carolina is easier. I do have them beating Kentucky, and they beat Arkansas. Arkansas, I don't have doing good this year. I only have them losing 2 games, Georgia and LSU, and they go 5-1 in the division, losing only to LSU. That makes them leapfrog over Alabama when it comes to the final standings. I will just tell you that right now. Alabama is 3rd in the final standings in the West. It goes LSU, Auburn, Alabama this year. Now we're going to move on to A&M. So A&M, they play Vandy, Florida, Carolina, and Tennessee. So they kind of have a 50-50 matchups when it comes to non-divisional. But I have them going 3-7, losing to Vandy, losing to Florida. They beat Mississippi State, Arkansas, and they beat Ole Miss. I think maybe the South Carolina one could change, and the Vandy one maybe. Their divisional games, they could change maybe too. Some of them, they definitely will lose Alabama, LSU, and Auburn. Mississippi State could be, or the Ole Miss game could be the only change where they win, and they could go 4-2 maybe. I don't know. So, but we're gonna move on to Mississippi State now, actually. So Mississippi State starts off actually with a hard game in Baton Rouge against LSU, and then they have Arkansas. So they're going to even up before they go to Kentucky and lose. Then they play A&M and Alabama back to back, home and away. They get their second win against Ole Miss in Ole Miss, and then they lose. They end up losing a total of 8 games. They only win the 2 games in division against Arkansas and Ole Miss. So we're going to actually go to Ole Miss now, and they play 3-3 in between. Vandy and South Carolina separate their divisional games. On Halloween, they play Vandy and they play South Carolina on the 14th of November. They open up against Florida and then they go to Kentucky. I don't have them winning a single game at all this year. That's just how it ended up stacking up when I did this. If they played Arkansas, I might have had them win one game, but Ole Miss and Arkansas are my 2 bad teams. Obviously, Arkansas won 1 game. They beat Ole Miss, actually. Damn it. I should have done that opposite. Well, it's too late now. It's already happened. So we're going to actually zoom out on this because you can't see. So we're going to zoom in on here. Obviously, East champ Georgia, West champ LSU, same record, 10-0, 6-0 in division. I have LSU winning the SEC championship. And then here are the final standings. So obviously, Auburn jumps over Alabama. And then it's kind of a reshuffling down here also. You have A&M staying where they were, though. And same thing with Mississippi State. You have Ole Miss and Arkansas flip, kind of. Then you have Kentucky jumping over Tennessee. And then you have South Carolina going to the bottom and Vanderbilt jumping up above them. So we're going to remove that. So now we're going to actually move on to the final conference in the Power 5. They are playing a round robin still in the Big 12. I almost want to say Big 10 because they only have 10 schools. But they might have 12 schools after this whole pandemic is over. Just real quick, I want to say my schools that I want to join the Big 12 after, if there is going to be a reshuffling or realignment of the whole conference right now, is I want Nebraska to go back, and I want Iowa to go also with Nebraska, and then I want West Virginia to go to the Big 10, and I want let's see who else to go to. There's obviously has to be someone else to go to the Big 10 to make it back to 14. I think Notre Dame would need to either join fully to the ACC or something needs to happen with Notre Dame for football, just in case something happens again like this in the future. Maybe Notre Dame decides to leave the ACC and go to the Big 10 so they're more geographic. Or you see Cincinnati get pulled up to the Big 10. So I definitely see a run on the smaller division or smaller conferences like the Group of 5 get run on, and the independents might get ran on. You might see teams go to conferences. But now we're going to move on to the Big 12. And here we are. So we're going to start off with the defending Big 12 champs in Oklahoma. They open up against Missouri State at home. I have them going undefeated, 10-0, 9-0 in conference play. It's kind of easy. Lincoln Riley just has it set up perfectly. They play Texas on the 10th in the Cotton Bowl again this year, as of right now. At least when I looked it up, that's what they're doing. There's no plans to play it at one of the stadiums on the campus. So yeah, Oklahoma's self-explanatory. I just think they have a good set on, the Big 12. Now we're going to move on to Baylor. Baylor, when I checked last, and I will double check right now because I want to see if they do have a non-conference opponent or not yet. So we're going to check that right now while we're live. Because they're like the only team, and they still are the only team that doesn't have one on their schedule. I do have September 12th on there, but that doesn't mean that's the exact date still that they're going to be playing. So we're going to – I just have them losing 2 games, Texas at Texas and Oklahoma at Oklahoma. So I have them losing those 2 games, and we're going to move on to Texas now. And Texas plays UTEP, University of Texas, El Paso, week 1, and that's at home. I have them only losing to Oklahoma this year in the Cotton Bowl. So honestly, that could be, I think, if I remember right, Oklahoma-Texas is the rematch in the championship game. But we'll get there when we get there. We're going to move on to Oklahoma State now, who surprisingly was up there in the 4th position. To me, that was really high, I kind of think. But I have them going 5-5. They play Tulsa at home to open it up on the 12th. They have Texas at home this year. That's their 2nd loss. Their 1st loss is to West Virginia, which, if I remember right, I might have them doing really good. Their 3rd loss is to KSU, Kansas State. And their 4th loss is to Texas Tech, and they lose their last game on December 5th to TCU. And they go 4-5 in the conference, so almost a division because of the last video. But the Big 12 doesn't even have divisions yet because they don't have enough teams. So Kansas State now, they host Arkansas State. I almost wanted to give Arkansas State the win here, but I didn't. And I do have Kansas State doing 6-4. They lose to Texas, and they lose to Baylor, West Virginia, and Oklahoma. Oklahoma is their 1st conference game. So now we're going to go to Iowa State. And when you do see the OSU on there, that is Oklahoma State. So just to let you guys know, it's not Ohio State or Oregon State. So this Louisiana that they play against is Louisiana Lafayette that Ohio played last year. They are good, at least when we played them. It was a good game. They really stopped our run game and everything. So I don't know how good Iowa's run game is, but I think Iowa has a better – Iowa State, I should say, not Iowa. Iowa State has a better chance at winning. I end up having them lose to TCU in Oklahoma, and then I have them lose to Oklahoma State, Baylor, Kansas State and Texas. I have them going 4-6 and 3-6 in the conference. We're gonna go to West Virginia now. So I have them going 6-4 and 5-4, like I did Kansas State, I believe it was. They open up against Eastern Kentucky, so it's a closer game for them actually compared to all these other games. Let's see. I have them only losing to Baylor, Texas, and Oklahoma and Iowa State. Obviously, the Iowa State game, as I said earlier, that would be good. Texas, that should be a good game actually. I believe both of those teams will be good when it comes to that matchup. So we're going to move on to TCU, Texas Christian. They open up the season against SMU. I just think SMU is going to be the better overall team when it comes to that. So I don't have them doing that good. Obviously, 4-6. That's not. It's hard to say that's a bad season when you only play 10 games. And obviously, if you just switch maybe 2 games in a normal season, you would be bowl eligible. But I mean, there's not much to say. It's just at this point, it just reflects on how I predicted the games in the past. We're gonna move on to Texas Tech now. They start off against Houston Baptist, which is an FCS school that is still playing. That's at home. Obviously, I'm going to give them the win. I'm not trying to say Houston Baptist is bad, but I just feel like Texas Tech is going to be able to handle a FCS opponent better. Obviously, losing to Texas. Obviously, I don't feel like they're going to do good until they beat Kansas on senior night. It's like I said with TCU, it's just how I've gotten that far. And then we're going to go to Kansas now. They face Coastal Carolina. I don't have Kansas obviously doing good at all. I have them losing every game. Kansas, I believe, only won 2 games last year. So this is just going to be not a good game overall or good season overall for them. With them having to play everybody in only one non-conference game. So, and here we go to the final standings in the championship game. Oklahoma undefeated. Baylor loses 2, so they're going to flip-flop with Texas from last year. Just here's a brief look. As I said, Oklahoma, Texas in a rematch. And I have Oklahoma winning still, though. And give a little brief. Let you look at that for a little bit. And then we're going to move on to the last one, and that is going to be the independents. So we're going to start with the University of Liberty. They're the one of 3 teams in the independents besides Notre Dame that are playing, but Notre Dame is a part of the ACC, so we're not counting them as an independent this year. Liberty is the only team, though, in the independents that is going to be playing a 10-game schedule, mainly thanks to the ACC, which is 3 of their games, as I said earlier. They're going to be playing Western Kentucky to start off at Western Kentucky. Then they post 3 straight games. Florida International, North Alabama, which was supposed to play, I believe, BYU, but they canceled basically every game except for their game against Liberty, which I thought was very weird. If they canceled every game besides Liberty, they should have just canceled Liberty, if not kept their game against BYU also. You're going to see when I get to BYU and Army how bad their cancellations were. So I have them going undefeated 5-0 all the way until they get to home against Southern Mississippi. And that game was a toss-up on ESPN, and I was kind of leaning towards Southern Mississippi when I got to it, and I just went ahead with it. especially when ESPN confirmed my thoughts. Then Virginia Tech, we already talked about that. We talked about NC State also earlier. I have them going 8-2 overall. Then we're going to go on to BYU. Here's what I talked about. Their last 3 games are canceled. They have a canceled game on the 24th of October and a canceled game on October 2nd. A lot of their games are on Fridays and Saturdays. They have a game on Monday the 7th against Navy. I have them losing every game up until Troy, and then I have them winning their last game against Western Kentucky. Obviously, a lot of these games are Mountain West teams or MAC teams, and here's that North Alabama game I was talking about. It was supposed to be their senior game, but it just got canceled by North Alabama when Liberty was still kept on the schedule. Army now is Rice got postponed on the 12th. I checked Rice's schedule. They haven't said anything. The only day I would see free for Army would be the 26th of September. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'll double check real quick on Rice's schedule is if it is still free for Rice to play then. Because other than that, Army is busy playing every weekend except for, I think, well, I mean, they obviously have all these open weekends because of the canceled games. They have all the way until November 14th against Tulane after that game against BYU. I only have them losing to Tulane and to Navy. Let's see. Yeah, Rice does not start playing until the 3rd of October. They postponed their game against Houston also, and they canceled their game against Lamar. Rice, I think, is only playing a conference-only schedule, it looks like. But I have Army going 3-2. Here's all their final records for you guys to look at. Liberty, only team playing 10 games, losing to Army 2-3 and Army 3-2, basically because of the game they play. They both are only playing 5 games. So we're going to wrap up everything here for you guys. And so we're on the air for about an hour here. So we'll be back Monday afternoon, evening after I get done with classes, and we're going to do a little news show with everything that's happened over the weekend since we did our news show on Friday and our normal podcast on Friday. We're just going to do normal shows like every 5 days a week, and we're going to just start doing that. And I believe that we're going to just do that and see how that goes. It's going to be easier on us on Fridays, especially for us. Mondays will probably be a little bit longer since we're covering everything that happened after Friday's show and everything on Saturday and Sunday and so far through to the show on Mondays. I'm trying to think. Just subscribe, comment what you think, leave comments, like Instagram's in the description. We have a number for the show. So yeah, I believe that's it. So just tell your friends also. Yeah, until next time, we'll see you Monday then. Have a good rest of your Saturday and have a good Sunday, and we'll see you then. Bye.